I'm Jenny Sauer. Welcome to the End User Tools Presents. This is the fruit fly data collection using ArcGIS field maps training. There is European cherry fruit fly training that's going to follow this. So if you're in the wrong spot, go ahead and jump off, no harm done. But this will be for fruit fly data collection in the ArcGIS field maps application. I have a poll up that I'm going to close. I'm going to give you about 3 seconds to finish up. Actually, it looks like we got 100%, so I'm going to go ahead and end the poll, but I asked you to tell me how you prepared for this course, and that kind of tells me whether the tools that are out there are being used and how to go with this course. This class is going to go pretty fast. I can see that many of you used the opportunity to train yourselves a little bit on ArcGIS field maps, the application itself, studying survey protocol, reviewing how to use the iPad if that's what you're going to use, and some of you use some other training tools as well. So that's great. You're set up very well then for this course. Fruit fly states that might be involved. If the states involve extensive trapping, then they typically use eTrap instead of ArcGIS field maps. And so the states that I'm aware of that are using field maps would be Alabama, Arizona, Georgia, Mississippi, New Mexico, and South Carolina. So those states are probably here. Maybe a couple of others might join in. And again, like I said, European cherry fruit fly training is going to follow this training today. And those states typically are, I believe, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Washington. So just to kind of give you the idea of where that's going. Every year, the End User Tools group, my group, refreshes the map used and the data form used for fruit fly survey data collection. But the bulk of the training on survey protocol requirements and everything related to the fruit fly data collection falls under the responsibility of Shaharra Usnick, who is the National Operations Manager. And so this training here today is going to go pretty fast, and it's really like the last step at the top of the staircase. So if you're like running up to dinner and dinner's upstairs, if you go with my analogy, the last little step before you get to go have your steak and potatoes is this class. So we will just take you through how to use the field maps application itself to collect fruit fly data. So just a few little, how does it work with fruit fly is what we're going to do. And in case I don't cover something that you need, or in case you haven't prepared as well as you hoped for this class here today, I want to show you a couple of tools. I'm going to put them in the chat as well. So there's a couple of links there. And let me pull this over to show you. This web page is a public-facing web page. It is a mobile data collection tools web page. And I'm going to turn my camera off so I'm not distracted by myself, but nice to meet you all. So this mobile data collection tools web page is very handy, and please bookmark it and check back often for updates. The top half of this main page is all document related, and the bottom half is all video related. And in fact, this course that you're here attending today, once we finish, will end up here under PEST program. So if I click that category, there are the trainings for 2022 that have occurred already for you, and you'll see it appear right here at the bottom as well. All kinds of foundational training can be found. Some of you probably already took advantage of the ArcGIS field maps course. You can search in the search box for anything you might want, including things like Survey 123 or iPad basics and all of those things. And then we have an explainers category, all kinds of how to get the most out of training to use these mobile apps. A couple of things to point out: we have a training events calendar. Some of you may have found this training today using this calendar. It's got every topic here, every program. And one thing I really want you to pay attention to, if it would be of use to you, is this End User Tools office hours. It is occurring. It started this week, and it's occurring every Monday all the way through the end of June. So the busiest season has just like a stop in and see the professor, and end user tools group is going to facilitate just an hour every Monday. And the link here to join is right here on the webpage. So if you end up with questions along the way or as you get started, hop into that Monday meeting, ask your question and leave. Look at it like office hours for a professor. You come in, you ask your question and you take off. You might wait a little bit if they're in the middle of answering another question, but otherwise should be a pretty easy stop-in kind of situation for you all. So that's important for you to note. Going back to the main page, Fruitfly also has, under pest program specific training documents, has their own little section, Fruitfly, and their own user manual and quick reference guide. This will be very handy for you to reference anything that I cover today. All right, so what are we going to cover today? Here's our learning objectives topics. We're going to fly through these, but many of these are covered in either videos or in the manual for you. Again, you have this video to reference if you need. Number one, we have a new app, the ArcGIS Field Maps. This is our first year using it. Previous users might have used the ArcGIS Collector app, which, if so, is going to set you up very nicely because it really looks exactly the same. You just open a different app. There's a new enterprise URL, so signing into the app, you need to make sure that you have the right URL, and training maps are held under a different environment, which just requires a different sign-in URL. So we'll go over that. A review of the disconnected workflow, and we'll talk about some trapping workflows just generally and how it applies to Fruitfly. We'll have a look at the data form. I have my iPad here that I can show you a little demonstration, and we'll talk about some caution areas, just some things that maybe you want to take special note of. Firstly, what is field maps? Some of you already took some training as you reported out in the poll, and that's great. I would encourage you to have a look at the webpage. There's a user guide for you for reference. There's been live training in January and in February, and there is a third offering March 17th coming up. So if you feel like you want some live training, it's coming up for you if you missed it, or you can review all of the videos at your own pace and go through training on your own. Really, it's all found on that website, so please keep that bookmarked for yourself. Basically, as I mentioned before, this field maps application is built on the code for Collector. So it's going to look very similar to the Collector app, but what it's doing, you may or may not have used any of these other applications. Probably not, but these are other mobile data collection applications made by the same company. And the company has created the ArcGIS Field Maps application to follow basically the gist of the Collector app while pulling in some functionality from these other apps. End user tools is going really gentle on using new features. So it should look very similar with very little changes at all, if at all, to the way that it works for you all this year. But if you used Collector before, that should be a pretty good start to understanding how field maps works. Signing in, this little sign-in screen might look familiar to some of you. It's the same with all of these Esri apps, and the ArcGIS Field Maps gives you the option to sign in with ArcGIS Online or Enterprise. Here at APHIS PPQ, we use an enterprise portal, and so you would always click this sign in with ArcGIS Enterprise, and you're going to want to, the first time through, manually type in that URL, and that's the URL right there. After you've done it the first time, it does kind of hold on to it. So after you've typed it in the first time, it's going to save it just like this. And the difference in portal URL here is this MRP is kind of your key hint that we're in the right portal. So this portal is managed in-house by MRP. It's got a lot of strengths to that. It should speed things up, especially when troubleshooting any issues. So we have a direct link to being able to troubleshoot those things in-house, basically. So you'll sign in using this MRP URL. Now, what was I talking about? Separate training maps. Last year, we were able to host them all under the same URL. And this year, we have to host training or test or practice maps in a separate staging environment, which means the difference here, this is that same MRP URL you just saw signing in. But the training or practice maps are an exact copy of the official data collection map so that you can train or practice, or in this case today, I'm going to use a training map to demonstrate things for you. So no real or official data should ever end up in a training map. You should always be very careful to be sure you're signed into this MRP URL to record official data. And so the difference here is kind of clear. MRP is the official data collection site, and you still see MRP, but you see this maps-stg. That's a little kind of abbreviated form of stage or staging. So staging environment is where you get to practice or demonstrate, and we want you to be able to do that. So we have these separate maps available to you. And a couple of hints on the training maps, you can tell that you're signed into the stage portal if you see a group that says PPQ End User Tools Training, and all of the training map titles begin with all caps training in them. So if you're in a map that says training in the title, you know right there, do not record official data there. So secondly, be sure you're in the right URL in order to record official data. Always record official data in the official data collection portal, which is this MRP. Just a quick review on disconnected mode workflows. This should be getting to be sort of familiar. This little diagram shows up every time we talk together and in every manual that you might read written. Basically, just like ArcGIS Collector, the ArcGIS Field Maps application is specifically designed to operate in disconnected mode. An area of interest is downloaded while you have a reliable connection to Wi-Fi, and then the device is disconnected from the internet. That downloaded map area is used to collect data out in the field while not connected to Wi-Fi. And then once you return back to the office or a hotel or wherever you have a reliable network connection, the data is synchronized back from the map area on your device up to that online map that's hosted in the MRP portal. So this workflow is important to note. It's a great one to have when you're out in the field, and quite handy that the application is built to do that. Trapping workflow. We talk about this every year, and it's probably pretty routine to you all, and your survey protocol takes you through this, but the app is built to record things this way. A first location to a visit records that location, and that is referred to typically as placing the trap. And inherent to that step of placing the trap this year is that it is also installed. Last year, there was kind of a burden of having to record first the trap place and then the install step. And now there's a field there on placing the trap, which I'll show you, I'll point that out to you, with the install date, which is inferring that the trap was placed and installed on that first visit. And then all future visits are really monitoring that trap. They're a trap activity, whether it's replacing lure or just having a look at it, or maybe removing it or relocating it. So first visit, placing the trap. Every future visit is a trap activity. And there's a few workflows to this that might add a little bit of difficulty, and one would be relocating the trap. And sometimes there's some confusion, around this first remove step. So on the original trap, there are two data entries that must be done. One is to record a trap activity, which would be remove, and the second would be to update the trap status. In some cases, that's true. In fruit fly, we'll have a look at that. Where the question comes into play is this trap activity of remove. A lot of people worry that when they record a trap activity of remove, the expectation is that they might see that symbol on the map disappear. And actually, that is not the expectation. In fact, it's very important to data entry that that trap site or that symbol on the map remains. with the last trap activity of remove. So I'm going to show you that, but you should not see, if you record remove as an activity, you should see that symbol remain. It should never be deleted. That's an important data entry that we want to keep track of. So everything that's happened to that trap up until that point, with remove being the last activity, is what you want to see. And then you would physically walk this little path wherever you're going to place the new trap and go ahead and start over by placing the trap. So that remove is where we sometimes get a little hiccup, and we don't want to be confused by seeing the symbol remain, because that is actually correct. So let's have a look at that. I'm going to pull my iPad up and show you what that looks like. Actually, I'm going to close out of this and show you, this is my PPQ iPad, and I do a lot of testing on my iPad, so you may see some apps here that don't look familiar, but a PPQ configured iPad should have all of these survey apps here along the top, and probably this quick capture as well, at the very least. You can see Collector is still here, but we will not be using Collector. It's not supported, and our maps cannot collect data in Collector. So we're going to go ahead and move over here to Field Maps and open Field Maps by tapping on it. I'm going to go back, just like Collector, it hops right into the last map you were in, but I'm going to go back to the main page. And this main page here is telling me right away that I'm signed into the stage environment. And one of the big key indicators is that all of my online map areas that I've downloaded previously say training. It's in the thumbnail, and it's in the title of the map right at the beginning, all capitals. Another thing, if I scroll down in groups, is this group here is where you will find all of the training maps, PPQ, End User Tools, Training. So that should tip me off pretty well that I'm in the right group. There's all the training maps there for me. And I'm going to go ahead, and I've previously downloaded a map area for fruit fly. I'm going to go ahead and open that up. And there's the downloaded area. And here I am, and a few buttons to take note of along the top. We have our sync button with the arrow in and arrow out. We have our layers button, and fruit fly has a reference layer for trap sites from the previous year, and it is defaulted to off. Oops, sorry about that. It is defaulted to off, and to turn it on, I can just go ahead and do that if I'd like to. I'm going to keep that off because there's really nothing in my area, and close that. I have a search bar, which might be enabled to help me find a trap by trap ID if I'm looking for something in the map. And I have this, what they call the overflow or 3-dot or ellipses menu. There's bookmarks, the ability to edit multiple. Probably the legend is important to you. You can see all of the traps and their symbols. The legend will show you only layers that are currently visible. So that's only showing us our current layer, the 2022 layer. And new to field maps is this markup layer. And the markup layer, it's important to note, you might use it. You can review videos. You can search on Google. The company itself talks about the markup layer. It could have use for you, but a real caution on the markup layer is that it lives only on your device unless shared out. So it's really kind of like a private notebook, and it could be quite useful, and I would love to hear how you use it if you find neat ways of using it. But that's a new feature to field maps. And just the caveat that it's like writing in your diary, really, unless you share it out, and it is not an official data collection layer. So that's that menu up there. In order to add data, surprisingly enough, you hit an add button, which is kind of cool. So we're just going to go ahead and hit add. And the first question really that's presented is, what type of trap are we installing? And because I don't know survey protocol and I'm relying on you all to know that, I'm just going to hit a random trap, and then the data form opens for us. Similar to most of these data forms, we have required fields indicated by a little star or asterisk, this gray asterisk after them. Tapping on the field allows you to enter data in there. I think I'm on test maybe 3. If the next field is going to use the keyboard, you have this option of next, or you could hit done to close the keyboard. I'll go ahead and hit next and see it just jumps to the next one. Again, I don't have survey protocol. I'm just going to make sure that it's clearly a test. The trap that we chose originally has been pulled in automatically. If that needs to change, you can tap that field and make that change. The host here, habitat, I'm going to say agricultural. Just for the sake of this demo, I'm going to pull the point away from me so that you can see this trap, and I'm going to update the point over there. But normally you would take this trap right on top of where you are, but so that you can see where we are, there's that trap symbol. Tapping and scrolling up allows you to move on down the form. I'm going to put in my surveyor name. I'm going to say this is a test site. And the install date's a good one. So if I tap install date here, it's going to open up a calendar. And this is restricted just to 2022. So it's probably easier for me to go back, but you can see there, I can't pull a date from the previous year. And if I were to accidentally maybe tap a date previous to today, I can update it to today by tapping today, surprisingly enough. And I also love that I can close this calendar by tapping that field again. I prefer to do that because I have fat fingered dates on a calendar so many times. So that's a really great way to kind of lock in your date. And the trap status here, as you can see, is automatically pulled in as active. So that's where if we were relocating, we'd want to change that to inactive. And then last step, always check your data over. Did I fill out all the fields that I needed to? Is it correct? And then go ahead and hit submit. As I said, inherent to this trap placement, we have this install date, and the install date is telling us that the trap was installed today. So that's the full thing, unless we want to come back and visit a trap. So for the sake of demonstration purposes, let's say we have to visit this trap here. In order to visit a trap and record a trap activity, let me close that for you. On the map itself, you'll want to zoom in and be careful to select that trap by tapping. And a selected trap has, this cyan around it that shows that it's selected, and the data form opens here. So you can make sure that you've got the right trap by checking the trap ID, or maybe the date or other fields here. And in order to add a trap activity, you can either tap this link icon at the bottom or scroll up to find that link icon again for the fruit fly activities form. Tap that. You can see that it was serviced previously. I'm going to add a new trap activity, and there's that little activity form. So I'm going to go ahead and add that in. We'll say that let's say that we are baiting this trap, and I'm not taking a field sample ID. I'm going to leave that blank. I'm going to go ahead and give this today's date, lock that in, check it over, and submit. So now we have placed this trap and installed it with one little data form. We've come back and visited this trap and recorded a trap activity. Let's have a look at, let's say this trap needs to be moved. Let's say we're going to move it up here to this junction or something. So I'm going to close that form. I'm going to close all of these forms. And in order to do that, remember on the original trap, there are two data entries. Number one is to record an activity of remove, and number two is to update the trap status to inactive. So I will select that trap. I will go to the activity table with this link button or scrolling up and hitting the link. I'm going to add a trap activity. The activity is going to be remove. There's removed. And I'm going to put the date in that it was removed as today and lock that up. Everything looks good. Okay, and submit. And now we've got this trap activity of removed as the last activity, but we need to update to inactive for the trap. So we have to X out of the trap activity and get back to the main data form. Oops, let's open that up. See, fingers are pretty touchy here. So this is the main data form, and we see that it is currently active. So in order to edit that, we're going to hit the pencil and edit. And that opens all of the fields up to be edited. And we're going to scroll down to the bottom, tap that, and change it to inactive, and submit. So Xing out of that now, this symbol is still here, but the last activity on it was removed and it is inactive. So then we would just follow through by placing our point, adding a piece of data here is an add button, and that will place the new trap. So just again, removing a trap site does not remove the symbol. All of the symbols remain here, but if you go into this guy and have a look at the activities, the last activity was removed today. So I think that covers what I wanted to show you, except for I want to X out of that. And let's look at these buttons along the top real fast. The sync button has changed in appearance. It used to be just 2 arrows, and now there's a dot on the arrow going out. So if you think about that dot, it's like it's a dot that exists here on the iPad, and that indicates there are edits that I have saved to my device that need to be synchronized out. And if I hit this sync button, I do want to point out you've got a list here of all the edits that we did here together, ready to sync. And this auto sync button is not enabled. And that's important whether you're on an iPhone, whether you're connected or disconnected mode, or you're on an iPad. And the reason being that the auto sync tries to sync the data whenever it senses a connection to Wi-Fi, and you do not want it doing that. The #1 cause for a failure to sync or a partial sync or a mess of a sync is an unreliable Wi-Fi network. So you want to do this sync step under your supervision when you know that you're in a manual when you know that you are under a reliable Wi-Fi network is when you want to be able to hit this sync button. So be sure this auto sync is not enabled, and you could see that it's grayed out, which means it's not, and turning it on would make it blue. We do not want that. So I'm going to make sure that is off. Okay, moving back to our workflow, a couple of caution areas that we really want to keep track of, and we talked about these all today. Be sure that if you are using a training map that you do not record official data in that training map. It's really important that official data goes in the official portal. So that production, the MRP URL is what you want to be signed into to record official data. Don't do that in the training maps, but use the training maps like we did today. Practice, demonstrate to others, use it to do little exercises and make sure you understand how things work. Be sure you're using disconnected mode if possible. That's really how the app has been designed. That submit button, we didn't look at it today, but it's a little bit more intuitive now in this ArcGIS Field Maps application. If you happen to miss a required field, it will tell you you've missed a required field, and it will give you a little red alert right away on what's missing there. Be careful with your data collection. I know you are, but it's a good reminder. Fill in your data form, check it one more time. Just give it one more eyeball before you hit submit. And you have the chance to do that when you're performing a daily data sync too. So watch those editing videos on how to edit based on the data sync list of edits. Make sure the auto sync is off, as we talked about. And just one more time, that markup layer, if you choose to use it, be careful with it. Remember that it is only on your device and it is not an official data collection layer. Don't use it for comments that should be in the official layer. So those caution areas are all important just to kind of bring up to you. Now, I talked about a lot in a very short amount of time, and you still may need help. And so the Fruit Fly program, anything survey protocol related, you want to head over to Shaharra Usnick and ask her questions that might pertain to what's going on with you. iPads are managed and supported by CECIT. If you've got a passcode issue, you can't get into it, or if the app itself isn't showing up, that's a really good reason to open a ticket with IT. Portal access in the first place to be able to sign in can be kind of a process. You want to start with your supervisor, really kind of go in the order of these bullets here. There's also help if you need it, support from the local GIS specialist, or an email here that your supervisor can reach out for more help. All things end user tools training, all mobile data collection training is on this mobile data collection tools webpage. I'm going to stick this in the chat one more time, but you have a link here to that, and please save it and check back on it frequently. Finally, there is a quiz. I stuck that in the chat box too. If you complete that quiz and submit it, you'll get a little email saying that you completed this course, which you can pass on to your supervisor. And again, please reach out with any questions at any time. Use that end user tools office hours and jump in and ask questions, but you can also ask me questions anytime at all. I have to run today because, like I said, we've got the European cherry fruit fly following back to back. So I'm going to run into that meeting. And but I wanted to leave this up for you. And please, please, please feel free to reach out and take advantage of office hours to ask questions if you have them. Have a great rest of your week, everyone. Thank you all.